Let's talk about test data. Databases use data, and one of the challenges we have when we're doing database development, or even application development, is finding data that we can use for those test and development environments to ensure that we're exercising our software. Now, it's a constant challenge for a variety of reasons, and one of those is that the task is handled quite inconsistently from project to project, organization to organization, or even person to person. We have inconsistent test data being built and used when we're testing and evaluating our code. We have disparate data sets that try to examine if functionality is actually working correctly. We also have a problem of managing our test data sets. Ideally, we would have a curated, known set of test data that everybody uses, every developer, every tester. It's maintained and it evolves as our application evolves. We can use a set to reconstitute our database at any point in time. It doesn't matter whether this is relational or NoSQL database. We want to have a consistent environment for our developers to experiment with, our testers to use for their tests, and be able to reset that between their different experiments or tests. Now, there are two challenges that people typically deal with when we're trying to generate this test data, we're trying to make it available. And that's, do we actually build it and generate it from scratch or copy it from somewhere? Typically, if a project is new, our developers have to create their own C data anyways. But sometimes in existing projects, they'll do that. They'll build their own test data. Now, some might be reference data where we know a list of states or countries or zip codes are available. Some might be transactional data where they have to mock up customers and orders and things like that. Developers typically have to write their own scripts to insert and generate this data. It doesn't matter whether the project is new or mature. They typically do that, and often they don't share that. There's no standard or accepted way of building test data. So people try different methods. They may script something. They may manually enter the data. They may use some sort of tool. They may share this data with other developers, but often they don't. It's likely that any given project is going to use a variety of methods of generating test data, which leads to inconsistently and poor quality software. Now, the other method of getting test data in development environments is one that some companies definitely prefer, and that's to refresh these environments using a backup from production. It's preferred because I get the same scale and skew of data in my test and development environments that exists in production. The downside is resource requirements. Production is typically larger, so every development machine, every test machine needs a certain amount of space and resources to run that data set. Again, doesn't matter whether this is relational or NoSQL, I've got to have enough storage to actually use that data. More importantly, I have to have the resources and the time to copy that data to many, many machines. That can be a budgetary problem. That can be expensive. It's also time-consuming to actually copy that data around, and that creates a bottleneck in the development cycle, which we're trying to avoid when we get to a DevOps process. On top of resources, though, we may have security and privacy issues. Database security, data privacy, data integrity is becoming a big issue in the world today. You may have medical data, PII data, financial data, and the development environments are typically not as secure as production ones. So copying that PII data or that financial or medical data to development may not be allowed. It's certainly not a good idea. Now, there's ways around these challenges. We can discuss those later in the course, but keep in mind that data presents a big challenge to any database development process.